Hey everybody, it's Dave Kurt with Lake City Realty coming at you with another episode of Selling the Rock, Sudbury's real estate podcast. Well, I've got Chad on the mic today and we're on video.
Yeah, I'm excited here. We've got some political issues we're going to talk about with the election coming up, and I mean, this is right in my wheelhouse, so I'm really excited to talk about this.
This is 100% in your wheelhouse. Every time something political comes up, Chad's my go-to guy, and when getting a text or our office group chat, just being like, Chad, what's your thoughts? Like, what's going on here? What's the real story behind what's going on here? So excited. And today what we're going to do is we're going to be breaking down a little bit of the different conservatives, the liberals, NDP, and even a little bit of the Green parties, the different platforms, what it means to housing-specific issues.
Yeah, exactly. We're not in a position to be experts in a lot of the categories of the political parties' platforms, but when it comes to housing, I mean, this is what we do.
We really try to familiarize ourselves as best as we can so that we can be educated to talk about it. I know this year specifically we reached out to all the different parties. We tried to have some interviews with all the different parties, and it was limited success. I think we've done 3 or 4 different interviews, but they turned out great in the end. So we were really happy. I know I just did an interview with the Nickel Belt Green Party leader just the other day. So excited that's going to be coming to video very shortly as well, and I think even in podcast form. But today, so let's chat about a little bit about what, especially the big 3 is kind of what we're going to look at, and we're going to tie in some of the Green platform in the end. But I think if we look at what's the biggest issue around housing, from a national standpoint, from a federal standpoint, it's always been there's too limited of a supply and so much demand. And if we look at like anything basic economics 101, is supply and demand have to be, somewhat level, or you're going to be pushing prices up, and that's exactly what's happening across the country.
That's exactly what's happening, and we're seeing it big time here in Sudbury, in particular the last 18 months to 2 years here. And it doesn't matter what your commodity is. When inventory goes down and demand even stays the same or goes up, you're going to see those prices skyrocket. And that's a little bit about what's happening everywhere. We're hearing it anecdotally. I mean, we can't speak to specifics in other markets, but we're hearing it from colleagues that we network with, Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, Vancouver, across the country. They're hurting for housing inventory right now. So I like that all 3 parties are committed to doing what they can to help spurn construction of homes. And I think some of the plans are a little ambitious.
So just as a summary, too, so everybody's on the same page, the Conservatives are saying they want to build 1 million homes in the next 3 years. The Liberals are talking about build or repair or retrofit 1.4 million homes in the next 4 years. And the NDP's platform is they want to build 500,000 affordable homes in the next 10 years. It was interesting that the NDP was the only one to specifically mention affordable there. I think all of them, the push is for affordable homes, and I still kind of struggle. Like, what's your thoughts on the definition of an affordable house?
I think everybody's definition of an affordable home is different. Demographics are going to determine that. I think in Sudbury, an affordable home for a typical middle-class family is going to be, $350 right now in this market on the low end to
below average sale price. So
yeah, right to about $500,000, which is going to be just a hair over average sale price.
And if you start looking at like the cost per square footage, like the builders are building about $350 a foot today, and that doesn't include your lot, that doesn't include the garage, that doesn't include all those extras. So you're buying a 1,000 square foot bungalow, which I haven't seen too many brand new 1,000 square foot bungalows get built. That alone is going to cost you $350,000 for construction, plus a finished basement, plus the lot. So like you're $500 before you even get out of bed right there. So
yeah, and you don't have your landscaping done yet. No deck off your patio door. You don't have your basement finished at that price.
Exactly. So it is a challenge that's in front of them. I think when I think about affordable housing, I think about the grants that are going to be there, right? So that their government's going to be kicking in extra money, and specifically around rental, where like people need to be able to live in affordable houses. So they're talking about more. Like I know that Dowron's done a few projects in the last couple of years. The one over on Copper Street just is the one that I'm thinking offhand, and they will be incentivized to put 25% of the building towards affordable units. And what that means is like it's going to be able to gear to income units, which is fantastic. And I think they only have to do that for 25 years or something like that.
I think you're right on that, yeah. And I'm hearing a lot of talk as well about incentives for green buildings. There's a big push to get to that net zero in construction. I think it's important to reduce our carbon footprint, and I like some of the incentives. I want to hear more about that from the parties personally, how they're going to do that. I like the idea of green homes moving forward.
There was like this big push towards that LEED standard, like that was like 10 years ago kind of thing. I think that's kind of fallen off. But every one of the parties realized that energy is one of the top things that is on their mind, and how to be able to have renewable and energy is going to be a big issue. Look at like what the pushback for the carbon tax, whether you're for it or against it, like it's the whole point of is becoming more environmentally friendly, right? So it's interesting to see, but clearly we have a supply and demand issue. It's nice to see that all three major parties have addressed this in one shape or form. Now, whether they can follow through with it and whether they have the integration between the federal, the municipal, and the provincial, because that's at the end of the day, like that's where the rubber meets the road and that things actually get done.
Yeah, it's just nice to see them actually acknowledging what the actual problem is here and putting ideas forward about how to address it.
One of the things that I've been really impressed by from the Ontario Real Estate Association is they're lobbying for a round table that would include the stakeholders at the federal, at the provincial, and at the municipal level, and I guess even probably big stakeholders like big builders and stuff like that. With can we actually address this issue? Is it designating some land to opening it up to developers, or like what does that actually look like so that we can actually move forward and follow through on some of these things? So that's the first one that we wanted to chat about a little bit. The second is kind of dealing with some foreign buyers. And the Conservatives and Liberals are both projecting a 2-year ban on foreign buyers, and the NDP is projecting a 20% foreign buyers tax. What's your thoughts on this?
It's not a reality I find in our marketplace that much, the foreign buyers. I'm personally opposed to a ban on investment. I don't care where. Investment is good, in my opinion, wherever it comes from. I'm not as well informed on how the foreign buyers are driving the marketplace right now to be able to make a fully informed decision on this. But as it stands right now, based on what I know, I don't think this is going to have really any significant impact on the housing market.
It's so frustrating. One of the blogs that I really follow and I really appreciate is Garth Turner, and he's a huge anti-housing guy, but an old political guy, and he's a daily real estate blog. It's actually the most popular blog in Canada from a real estate perspective. So every single day I'm tuning into that. But he did a big story when BC looked to introduce their foreign home buyers tax, which they have done. And basically, like, how they did it was so unscientific. They actually went through transactions, and they said, they're like, we have a foreign buyers, and it's easy to run with things in the media, right? And that's as a local people that are getting priced out of neighborhoods. They're like, it's easy to point to something else, and let's blame it on the Chinese that are coming in and buying up all these houses. But what happens? They went through these transactions. They went through the agreement to purchase and sales, and they said, did this name look Chinese? And that's how they called foreign buyers. So that was the first version of a test, and which is so wrong that there was no real proof of anything.
Well, especially a market like Vancouver, where the Asian community is probably the largest ethnic demographic in that area.
Yeah, so it was so wrong. And what did it do to housing? Again, it's the media wants to run with the story, and the media can run with foreign buyers tax. I actually think that Canada as a general, our population is so small. We need immigration. Sudbury, again, we've boomed. For our boom to continue and where things need to go, which I'm excited about, is immigration needs to happen. We're seeing it happen now. I think it's such a fantastic thing, and it needs to continue to happen. But yeah, so banning foreign buyers, which is just is not the way to go about it in my mind. Especially again, nothing. It's going to do nothing for the actual marketplace. What it's going to be is going to be a headline that the media can run with then, and then again, how the media will influence the real estate market is a different topic of conversation.
And I couldn't agree more with everything you just said there.
Yeah. So if we kind of break down some of the other ones, so the Conservatives are looking to ease the stress test specifically for self-employed people. You were just commenting about that off air. What was your thoughts on that?
Well, it's for people to understand this. So when you're employed for self, like we are as realtors, for example, personal vehicle, we use that for business. In my case, it's probably 85 to 90% business use. So I'm writing that down. It's coming off my income. But if I went out and financed that vehicle, I also have that loan payment. So the income drops, but the debt still counts against me as for qualifying for a mortgage with my debt to income ratios. So I'm for this 100%. I want to see the criteria that they're going to use for easing this stress test. But that's if they do it where, if you're writing down a certain thing, but you have debt attached to that thing, right? And we're going to kind of ignore that debt for the write down, or allow you to recapture that write down towards your income and still count the debt. I'm all for this. I think this is great. Small business drives the economy. Anything that's going to help small business owners, I'm in favor of.
Just as a reminder, though, like what the stress test is so when you're going to go qualify for a mortgage, it's not like you could be like, oh, the rate's 2.2%. This is fantastic. I can get a bunch of money out for a loan and buy $1 million house. Well, the government has told the banks that they actually want you to qualify at like 5.2% or whatever, so 3 percentage points higher, or there's a few different things to. That's what the stress test is all about, and it's to say what happens if rates go up. Will you still be able to qualify for that mortgage? Yeah. And that's why like. I don't really have an issue with this where like it is frustrating that maybe, you know, as a self-employed person, they make it very difficult to buy. You need to have 2 years of income. You need to be able to show, you know, they make you jump over backwards. But what I think that we run into is self-employed. Like some years are great, some years are tough. Yeah. And like real estate as in general has been great for the last few years, but like we know like eventually it's gonna like it's gonna be tougher out there in the future, and like if you don't have a regular paycheck, you can't bank on that stuff. So like the worst thing that I can see is people getting over their head, and I think the stress test is a good thing that's been introduced that helps, you know, moderate things and help people like buy homes they can afford. And like that's why again I don't think that
I don't have a problem with the idea of the stress test. I'm actually in favor of the stress test. But I don't think the criteria that they're using right now are realistic or fair to a lot of buyers. We're hearing, well, not even hearing, we're seeing clients right now getting mortgages under 2%. We're being stress tested at 5.25%. I've been in the business 12, 13 years now. I haven't seen a 5% interest rate.
I'll never forget my first year in the business. I was telling somebody, I'm like he's like, Dave, what do you think? I'm getting 4.5%. Like, what should we do? I'm like, honestly, 4.5% is the historically lows. I would love a 4.5% mortgage. We should be taking that and running it. Lock that in as long as you can. And it's never been up there again. It's always gone down. So again, we're not going to be seeing this forever because we can't. It's just not physically possible. But again, it's an interesting place to go. The next one, the Liberals. Banning the ban to blind bid. So what's a blind bid right now? Just to explain.
Well, the blind bid is what probably a lot of you have been experiencing if you're out buying right now. It's you go look at the house and there's 10 offers on the table. You and your agent write your offer. Basically, metaphorically, seal it in an envelope, provide it to the seller's agent. Seller's agent presents to the buyers. That's a blind bid. You don't know what the other offers are going to be.
And so, like, you could be $100,000 over, you could be $200,000 over, you could be $1,000 under. So, like, we don't really know that situation. So, what they're proposing is more of like what we see in Australia, where it's an open bid, where it's an auction, where we say the next people are willing to pay $357. Are you willing to go up $2,000 or $5,000 higher? Yes or no? And then the rest of the marketplace has a chance to react to that. So, what's your thoughts on both points of it? I think this is one of the biggest topics that's at discussion right now. So.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with the concept that we need more transparency in the process for people. I think the more people understand the process, the more comfortable they are with it. But we're hearing from Australia that this did not help when they implemented this. That actually resulted in increased housing costs. It increased the price of homes. And I think people in an auction situation get wrapped up in the emotion of the moment. And that's dangerous, that you end up making mistakes in that case. I can speak to how I deal with my clients in these blind bids is we sit down, this is what the house is actually worth, this is what a competitive offer is going to be, these are the pros and cons, and they're making an educated, informed decision about what they're putting in their bid. I just think the auction is not the way to go. Anything that removes options from a consumer, I think inherently is bad for the consumer.
It's so tough, right? Because like at the end of the day, there's more things than price involved for sure. Now, again, most of these offers, like when you're dealing with 7 or 8 offers on a property, there might be 2 or 3 that come in with conditions, but the other 5 offers are coming in clean, no conditions. They're usually trying to match your closing date anyway. So really, it is coming down to price that you're negotiating on, and that they're saying could be handled in auction format. And I tend to agree. Like in some situations, it could be. Like I've got some friends at Katie down at over the block in Toronto area. Like this is their business model. They're doing a very successful job at it, and she's been doing it for a few years now. I think that what's the point against it is just what you're saying, where when you're in an auction, you're not there to buy the house. You're there to win the bid. And that's what they're trying to get away from. And it's like, oh, the idea that it's only an extra $5,000 and I can win, as opposed to, am I wanting this house for X dollars? Now, there's been times, and I remember having a chat with one of our teammates where he was going like $250,000 above asking price on a deal. And I'm in my mind, like nobody was even going more than like $150,000. So I thought they were probably overpaying by $100,000. Now, it was worth it. Like to that purchaser, he was going to be repositioning it, and like he was able to cash flow as a multifamily property, and like in his mind, it was worth $250,000 above asking price. So He put the bid on it, and he won it, and like again, so he's able to win it for where he felt comfortable with. Could have you got a better deal if it was an auction? For sure, he could have. Then who's that favoring? The seller, the buyer? Hopefully, the buyers are making decisions based off an informed decision of where they feel comfortable at. I really try to have the conversations with all my buyers that are in multiple offers to say, if you miss this for $1,000 or $5,000, are you going to be comfortable? Whenever they tell me that number, I'm like, if it sells for that number plus 2,000, are you going to be okay? And if the answer is yes, then like that they put the highest number that they feel comfortable with, right? So,
and that's the same conversation I'm having with all my clients too. Just if you find out the next guy paid $1,000 more, you're comfortable walking away from this deal and saying it wasn't meant to be.
Yeah.
And when they say yes, then you've got your number, right? I think it's all about informed decisions and options. The more options people have, the better their situations are going to be.
It's true. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here. I think if it was an open bidding process and this is what we've been doing for a while, maybe we'd have a different look at it. But I think it's always the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence.
Yeah.
And especially to those buyers when there's, we've seen not really locally, but 30, 40, 50 buyers. And like I've got some text from some people, some friends in Southern Ontario that there's 100 offers on places. Like there's 99 losers, which is leaving a sour taste in 99 people's mouth, right? And then, like, if you've missed out on 7 bidding wars, maybe you are getting a little more aggressive and going to numbers that you don't really feel comfortable with.
And I have clients right now, actually just talking to them this morning, where we've missed out on, I think, 5 or 6 bids now, and they said, you know what, we're just going to cool it for a little bit. Our nerves are shot. I said, absolutely. It takes some time. They're not in a rush. They're not homeless. They've got a place. They've got a roof over their head. But just getting beat up in the marketplace has put a lot of stress onto them. And I said, you know what? It's fine. Let's take a step back for a little bit here.
It's a very emotional thing.
It is.
To buy a house, right? We think of like as an agent, we're handling the numbers and stuff like that. But like, like I dealt with some like, and they're like they missed out and they. Like she was crying and I'm just like it's frustrating, can I afford the house that I want, like am I priced out of the market, like there's so many range of emotions and it's a roller coaster, and I wish that we could be doing something easier for them, but all we could do is do our best in the situation. Anyway, we'll get off from that point because we could be chatting about that, I think, all day. Kind of thing. If we look at some of the CMHC changes that they're proposing, I know the Liberals are saying a 25% reduction in CMHC cost, which would be kind of interesting to see. They're also projecting a first-time homebuyer's tax credit doubled to $10,000, which is... So right now the $5,000 tax credit is like when you buy a house, you don't pay that land transfer tax up to $5,000. It's that would double, like basically that a $5,000 tax credit works out to about a $450,000 house. So they're actually saying you could buy up to about a $900,000 home, at least in Sudbury standards. Now where this actually plays a part, I think, is in Toronto, where they've got the double land transfer tax more than anywhere else, because we're not a lot of first-time home buyers are buying $900,000 houses in Sudbury.
No,
that's for sure.
And to be honest, I don't think a lot of first-time buyers are buying $900,000 houses anywhere.
Yeah, unless it's parents' money that are funneling in.
Yeah.
The other one that was interesting to see is the NDP is looking to reintroduce 30-year insured mortgages. What's your thoughts there?
I mean, okay. I don't think it's needed. There's not a huge difference between a 25-year term and a 30-year term in payment. It's definitely something that's going to help lower income earners spread out that amortization on their mortgage, that additional 5 years. It is going to make it a little more affordable for them. I had no problem when they scaled it back. A lot of people were doom and gloom.
It was like 15 years ago, I think, they scaled it back.
No, I was in the business. I remember maybe 10 years ago. I think it was about a year or two into my career. And it was doom and gloom. Oh my God, this is going to totally change the real estate landscape. And it really didn't. For a little bit of background, this was to avoid the 2008 collapse that we saw in the U.S. housing market. So some of these things that were introduced, like reducing the 30-year mortgage to a maximum 25-year term, introducing the stress test, was a kind of a reactionary step to what happened in the U.S. to help avoid that happening here in Canada.
Yeah, and again, which I just kind of hit the nail on the head. What is that 30-year mortgage does is it takes a $300,000, $400,000 for whatever price, and whatever those payments are going to be, you spread them out over an extra 5 years, which is about 20% of your mortgage, so that you could probably afford 20% more home. Now, what I don't want to see is I don't want to see people buying 20% more expensive properties because they can afford them based on what the banks are saying. And I think it's a bad idea. I think mortgages are smart debt, especially if you can get into things where you're feeling comfortable with numbers. But I always I start every buyer consultation with like, so what have the banks told you can afford, and then what do you actually feel comfortable affording? Because those are two different numbers, and like sometimes the numbers are like, if I went to the bank and qualified for a mortgage today, like the number that they would tell me would not be anywhere close to where I'd want to spend on a mortgage.
Yeah, I always recommend to clients, whatever the bank pre-qualified you for, subtract 10% from that. That should be your comfort zone.
What I'm usually saying is I'm saying to borrow $100,000 will roughly cost you $400. You know, like, and it's like if you run a mortgage calculator, it'll probably be like $280 per 100,000. But again, expect the rates to go up sometime in the future, and you want to build that cushion in. So if you're borrowing $300,000 mortgage, well, that's about $1,200 of payments plus your taxes, plus your hydro and heat and all those expenses and stuff like that. But the actual debt, expect to pay about $400 per 100,000. Yeah. So I would actually be against the idea of extending to 30 years. Like, I think I want people to be in houses they can afford. I don't want to see people buying more than they. And I actually think by making a change like this, you're just going to make the houses 20% more expensive.
I agree. I'm actually more lean towards indifferent on this, but if I was forced to pick in favor or oppose, I agree with you. I'm opposed to this. Yeah. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's going to have enough of an impact in a positive way, and I think it could have a larger negative impact.
The other one that was surprising to see, and it's, the NDP is putting this on the table, is rental support of up to $5,000 per family. Any thoughts on that?
Well, just in general, I find that the NDP's housing platform is leaned more to lower income earners and renters. I'm all for helping families provide. I want to see more details on this. Maybe it's because we're seeing rental prices going up ridiculously. It's something we're seeing very much in Sudbury here. And we're hearing from families that are struggling just to put food on the table. So not necessarily opposed to this, but I want to see the criteria for how you're going to qualify for this. And I would like to see it more on a sliding scale of income. Let's make sure the money gets to the people who actually need it.
Yeah, and if it's like again, $5,000 broken down by 12 months is like you're looking at just under $500 a month. It's not a lot of extra money that's coming in, and like. It's Chad to hit the nail on the head. Like, rentals are very expensive right now, and it's frustrating to these buyers that are or these tenants that are saying like, I can't afford rent, let alone saving for a down payment or whatever. And it's a conversation I've had with a lot of different people. I'm like, buying your first house is tough. Buying your second house is easy if you have goals of building your portfolio or something, and that's because you're using equity at that point. So it is tough, and I do sympathize with that perspective. But at the same time, like, these are market value forces, and where's this $5,000 per family going to come from? We need to be able to pay the bills at the end of the day, and we've seen that our debt's ballooned by $400 billion in the last 12 months. So like, there's a lot of money that we've taken on. Like, we have to make sure that the debts can be paid by the end of the day. And I would hope that this isn't just kind of promising something and then we'll see where the money comes from after kind of thing. But we'll see. Now to go to one of the most interesting parts of this, and this is one thing that I know you and I have both chatted at length with, is the capital gains deferral. And just so people are aware, so basically, if I sell my personal residence, there's been a lot of chat about this, and the Liberals have come out and said we're not going to be taxing this because your personal the personal house you live in is tax exempt. There's been a few Liberal people that have said no, this will be coming. If this comes, it's suicide. The Liberals would be
it's not a good idea.
It would be slaughtered. Like people, the most expensive asset they have is their home, and you don't want to this is where the retirements come from. Like, if you're starting to tax this to get these big gains that are out of it, there's going to be huge uproar, which it's like already Trudeau's come out and said he's not going to be taxing it. But some individual MPs have said that this is coming. So that was kind of interesting from the Liberal perspective. But on rental properties, there is tax. And like, it's, if you sell a rental property, if the house has gone up $100,000, again, we're not accountants, we're not giving financial advice. But if you had $100,000 gain, how a capital gain works is you take 50% of that gain, so you take $50,000, and you add that to your personal taxes for the year. So you times it by whatever tax bracket you're in. So, and sometimes it could be a $20,000 tax bill.
And it doesn't matter what the investment is, right? Any investment income that you earn is taxed this way, whether stocks, bonds,
there's like
real estate,
that would be treated a little bit differently. But yeah, typically like investments are treated this way. So what they do in the U.S. is they say if you sell that rental property and you make $100,000 gain, but if you buy something else in within a specific timeline, that you won't have to pay that capital gain. So that $100,000 won't have to be paid now. But they're keeping track of these things, and they say, well, you like if you buy bigger, then you don't pay the gain, right? So and then if you sell that one and you buy bigger, and eventually you buy a big apartment building, and then that person's going to die, in 30 years from now or whatever, and they started with a $100,000 investment, now it's worth $1 million. Well, when they pass away, now the gain will be taxed.
Yeah.
So that's what they're saying is like there isn't like these things will be taxed eventually. It's just encouraging
Reinvestment.
Reinvestment. Right?
Yeah, and this is a great thing. We want these people to invest in these properties and fix them up and create this housing. This, I think, is a great way to incentivize that. And like you said, let's stop looking at the short-term picture here and say we need to get our money into the government coffers right now and think about the long-term gain that we can maybe address some of these other housing issues by encouraging these investors to reinvest this capital back into the housing market. And then, like you said, when they either cash out in the long term or they pass away and the estate gets taxed, the government's going to get their money in the end.
Yeah.
Anything that encourages continued investment is a positive in my mind. This is something that I've supported for a long time. I agree with you that it has to be a finite amount of time here. You can't say, oh, we're going to reinvest it 3 years from now. No. You've got to do it within 12 months or 3 months, 6 months, whatever reasonable time frame that everybody can agree on. This is a fantastic idea.
And I'm sure I'm a biased person as somebody that invests in real estate as well, kind of thing. But I would love to have this available to me where I would if this was the policy, it would encourage me to go sell some places and go buy more places. Right now, like we've sold a few places and we're just happy to sit in the sidelines. Mm-hmm. So like it would have encouraged me to put that money back into the marketplace. So like it's an interesting concept, one that I'm going to be supportive of as of now. I could see some reasons against it is because they're getting a lot of money off capital gains and the government's in a position where they can't pay their taxes. There's not enough tax income that are generated to pay the bills at the end of the day. So they need the taxes now. And like Chad said, you're suffering in the short term. You're ignoring short-term tax gains, and you're pushing those to the long term for those bigger gains. But at the end of the day, the government can't pay the bills right now, and that's why we have deficits. So, an interesting point to see where it's going to go. But yeah, it's something that I'm definitely supportive of, and it's the first time I've seen this on any of the platforms. So it's something that's encouraging.
Yeah, this is a completely new thing to come out here, politically speaking,
from a Canadian standpoint.
From the Canadian standpoint, yeah.
And you had a few things you want to touch about on the Green Party as well. So
it was just, and it's a conversation that you and I have had before. Something we see here in Sudbury where we have some developers buying properties and then sitting on them. The Green are suggesting implementing empty home tax. Not opposed to the idea. My comment before we jumped on here was that I don't feel it's a federal issue. I feel that this should be encouraged on a municipal level or a provincial level to be addressed. But we'll use a practical example here of the old St. Joseph's Health Center, which is
drive by it. I love the mural, but like at the same time, like it's a huge missed opportunity. Like the fact that Panoramic's been sitting on this and not doing anything with it for 7 years now, I feel like it's like this is deferred tax. Like what would the taxes be like when this thing would be built, right? So it's again, I'm not against an empty house tax, and like I know that the Liberals platform, they said there's something that went viral and they said use it or lose it, and that was like everyone was talking. Well, the Liberals they can't tell me how I need to do my personal property, but they can make taxes more expensive if they
create some form of incentive or disincentive to not do anything, so that these properties aren't sitting derelict. We have a housing shortage. The properties are there. Let's somehow find a way, whether it's a penalty to a developer for sitting on a project or offering an incentive to fast track the project, get it done. This could help address the affordable housing crisis in a big way. So this is just something I wanted to touch on because I feel it's something that's easily implemented that could really address the housing shortage that we're experiencing right now, in particular affordable housing, just by spurring development. We're not going to see the gains from it in next year or the year after, but I think it's something within 5 years we could very easily see some major gains in that affordable housing category.
I think the Liberals used the wrong term when they said use it or lose it. That's the one that went viral. I again, this is something that I'm fully hearted to agree in, that like we should disincentivize these developers. These developers are not hurting in this marketplace right now. These developers are having the time of their life, especially if they're just holding property. It's been increasing at a rapid rate, and the kind of taxes they're paying, like if we use St. Joe's Hospital as an example, like the taxes are nothing compared to what it could be in the future when it's developed. And if we were to say taxes are even going to be 4 times the amount they're paying now, they'd be able to afford that very easily. But maybe that, and again, it would be probably a small amount to make a decision whether to go ahead and spend $100 million plus on a development. But at the same time, it would say, do I want to develop? Like, is it going to incentivize me to make this development and fast track this a little bit? And if that means more supply in the housing marketplace, even if that's not the affordable stuff, if we just have more supply in general in the marketplace, that's going to help relieve the supply and demand issue. So I'm definitely a fan of like some version of that. I think people see like an empty home tax and think it's going to be like, oh, like I can't keep my house. They can't tell me what to do with things, but it's not going to be for a 1 month term while I'm trying to get a tenant in there. This is for a long term. You hold something for 6 months, 1 year plus, where you're not trying to get it. You're not even making an attempt to get it rented. It's more for developers than it is for amateur landlords, in my mind.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head when you say we don't know any poor developers or struggling home builders right now.
Not in this marketplace, yeah. Just by holding the land for the last 24 months, they've done exceptionally well. So
yeah.
Perfect. Well, thanks a lot for having me on the mic, both of us on the mic, Chad.
Yeah.
I know you're definitely a politically charged person. How many days till the election? Is it the 20th?
20th, yeah.
So we got
Monday.
4 days. Monday. Wow. A big day Monday where I'm excited. I know for myself, I make a point of bringing all my kids with me to the polls to go vote. It's a big day, and we'll definitely be encouraging. I'd love to see 100% participation in the election from our office at least. So.
Yeah, and I do the same thing. I try to bring my oldest son and show to him why it's important. I always say it's a line from a show I love called The West Wing. Aaron Sorkin, the writer, came up with this. The best way to preserve our democracy is to participate in it. And I always encourage, no matter who you vote for, please go out and vote. Make your voice heard.
We'll look forward to some coverage on the 20th. Thanks, guys.